In this next part, we're going to take a look at using the Lasso Selection Tools and also doing a little bit more work with layers. Let's get started. So I'm going to go over here, and as you can see, there's a little lasso tool. And the original lasso tool is you can mark anywhere, and whether you complete the circle or not, it's going to make a selection and complete it. As you can see, I'm just making random selections, and it doesn't matter where I start and end, it's going to complete the selection for me. There's also what's called the Polygonal Tool. And for this tool, it's a click once and move your mouse. It's not a click and drag. So I'm going to zoom in so I can see where I'm clicking using the Control plus on my keyboard and then my little hand tool with the spacebar. I clicked once and I'm moving the mouse. I'm not dragging. I'm not click, hold, and dragging. I'm just moving. Click once and move the mouse. And I'm going to click here again. And then do several clicks to make a more rounded corner. Instead of getting a square corner, and as you can see, I'm just doing small little clicks to make a corner instead of a complete square. And I'll do this until I get to the end of, or where I started my selection, and then I'll see a little circle, which means I'm going to complete my selection. And once I do, you will see the marching ants around the image, which means that is my selection. Now up here in the top menu bar, there are different options for all of the selection tools, basically. I did not talk about this on the marquee and the elliptical selection tool, but it works the same way, where you have 4 different buttons here. One is this first one is to make just an individual selection. So every time you click and drag, you're making a new selection. The next one over is to add to your selection. So if you click and drag and make a selection, but then you want to add to it, this button can be selected in order to do so. The next one is if you click and drag, but then you have too much and you want to subtract from your selection, you can do that as well. And the fourth button is to do intersect. So if you want to do one big selection, but then you want to take out the middle of it, then you select the middle and it will take out that middle but leave the 2 outer edges there. And I often don't use that that intersection, excuse me, option. I think that is a little bit more of an advanced option that you would use when you're getting pretty creative with your edits. So let's go ahead and use the first button for now, and then we can use keyboard shortcuts to add and subtract to our selections. So I'm going to be nitpicky and be looking at this top corner here, this top right corner, and I want to add to my selection because it looks like I am cutting off the book and going to make a weird selection. So I clicked once, dragged, clicked once and dragged, clicked once, drag, got my little circle, there we go. And now I have a little bit more of a proper selection, I guess, if you will. Okay, so I'm a little bit more happy with that selection. So I'm going to select my Move tool. I'm going to do copy and paste to create a new layer with just this selection on it. I'm going to move that layer over so I can see, do my space bar, move my hand tool so I can move the screen over, and move that separate so I can examine all sides of it. And I think that actually looks pretty good. And then we're going to go over to the Layers panel, and we're going to double click on the title of the layer and rename that book so that I know which layer has the book on it. Okay, so let's take a look at the Polygonal tool just a little bit closer. In most cases, all I want to do is click and drag, and I can move in any direction that I want to go. But if I hold the Shift key down, I'm limited to moving on the 0, 45, or 90-degree planes. So let's make a triangle. I am not holding the Shift key at the moment. And I've completed my triangle. And now let's say I want to add to my selection. Let's move the screen a little bit so we can see a little bit more. I'm going to add to the selection. I'm going to hold the Shift key, get that little plus sign, click once, let go of the Shift key, click and click. And if I press the Shift key again, you can see that I'm moving on the 0-degree plane field or the 45. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to click again. I'm still holding Shift, and as you can see, I want to complete my triangle or my second triangle to add to my selection, but I can't because I'm holding the shift key and it's constraining where I can go. So I've let go of the shift key, got the little circle, and I can complete my selection and add to my original selection. Now let's say I'm not happy with that particular shape or selection and I want to subtract from it. I hold the Alt key once, or I hold the Alt key, click once, let go of the Alt key, and then click again. And as you can see, I'm not holding the Shift key down. I am freely moving where I want my selection to go. If I hold the Shift key down, it will constrain where I can draw my selection line. And still holding the Shift key, I'm going to click and drop one more point and then try to make a perfect triangle. But as you can see, I cannot do that holding the Shift key. So I have to let go of the Shift key in order to meet the point, get that little circle, and complete the shape area of which I want to subtract from my selection. Okay, so let's get rid of this selection and we'll talk about a couple more features that work for this tool as well as the other lasso tool that we'll talk about in a minute. Clicked and dragged and made another click, but I don't want that other point right there. So what I did was I hit backspace to get rid of that point, and I'm going to start over. Well, not necessarily start over, but click where I want to, but oops, I accidentally clicked there again. But now I just decided I don't want to make this selection at all. So I'm going to hit escape on my keyboard and it gets rid of everything for me. Okay, so let's zoom out really quick. I'm going to do a Control-0 or a Command-0 if you're on a Mac. So now let's take a look at the magnetic lasso tool, which is housed underneath the, well, not with the quick selection tools, my bad, sorry about that. Let's go up to the lasso tool selections and let's take a look at the magnetic lasso tool, which allows you and Photoshop to work together in order to make the selection. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit on this octopus so that we can take a look at this tool. I'm going to do a Control plus, the space bar to get my hand tool to move the image around, and I've zoomed in a little bit too far. Let's go out a little bit and we'll get started with this. So for this tool, I'm going to click as close to the edge or on the edge of the object that I want to select, and I'm just clicking once, and then I'm just moving that arrow around the edge of the object I want to select. And because of the contrast in color, let's zoom in so you can see this a little bit better. Because of the contrast of the color, Photoshop is able to see where the edge is to make the selection. And I can manually click and add an anchor point, which are those little squares there that you see, if I want, in corners or if it's not taking the round very easily. And as you can see, I'm not clicking, I'm just dragging my mouse. And oops, I drug my mouse way too far out. I'm going back to the original point, and then I'm just hitting backspace to get rid of all those other anchor points, and then I'm going to continue following the edge of my object. And then in that corner, I'm going to click, and oh, my magic mouse is not cooperating, and now I've got all these other points. I'm going to hit backspace again. But as you can see, because I didn't move back to where I wanted to continue from, anchor points were still continuing to be made. Now that I'm back on track, I'm just going to continue to follow the edge of my subject, and once I get to corners, if I want a sharp corner, I'm just going to click myself and then continue on from there. And click, make myself a corner, follow the drag, and again, I'm not holding my mouse down, I'm just moving it. And because of that shadow or that darker area, Photoshop is thinking that it does not want to select the edge or that 3D image of that green part. So I had to manually drop or click to drop points on there because it was thinking that part of the ribbon was actually part of the shadow because there wasn't enough contrast. So I'm just going to continue to follow along on the edge, and you can go as fast and slow or as slow as you want to go, depending on how much contrast there is as to how fast you are able to go. I'm just backspacing and clicking to drop those points manually so that I can include that shadow to give the 3D look of that object. And this tool, if you struggle with it, don't feel bad. It does take a lot of practice to get control over this tool. I have struggled with this myself and gotten frustrated, but as time went on and the more practice I got, the better I got. And to get the little hand so that I can move and see where I'm going, I'm just hitting the space bar. I'm not changing tools. I'm not clicking anywhere else to change the tool. I'm just hitting the space bar and holding it while I click and drag, and then release the space bar to go back to the previous tool that I was using. And now that I'm at the end, I have the little circle there that will complete the selection. And let's move and zoom out just a little bit so you can see that that whole object is selected. However, there's that center part right there that I don't want that to be part of my selection. Those are part of the blanket. So just like all the other tools, I'm going to hold my Alt key down to get that minus sign to show that I'm subtracting, and I'm going to do the same thing on the inside of that circle. Oops, it missed, so I went back to my point, and I'm going to hit backspace and try it again. That worked a little bit better. Continue around. Oops, go back, backspace. There we go. And sometimes the slower you go, the more time Photoshop has to analyze the area that you're in, so it'll give you a better selection. And again, I want to subtract that area right there, so I'm going to hit Alt. And you can see Photoshop isn't really cooperating. It's not finding the circle, so I'm going to have to click and add my own anchor points in there as best as I can. But it's still helping me a little bit to keep on track where the edge is. All right, so now we have our selection. Let's zoom out using Control minus on the keyboard to see it in its entirety. And then before we do anything, we want to make sure that the layer that the object is on is active. If one of the other layers is active and we try to do a copy and paste, we'll get this error that says there are no pixels available to be copied. So we'll hit OK, and let's toggle the visibility. And as you can see, the selection where it is, there are no pixels to be copied because on that particular layer. So let's go back to the background copy layer, and we'll do a copy and paste. We get the brand new layer. We'll go to our Move tool and move the pasted object over so that we can visually confirm that what we have is what we want. Okay, so now that we've got these two octopi, I don't know what the plural is. Anyway, now that we've got two of the same image and they're on separate layers, I'm going to back it up a little bit. I'm going to show you how to save the selection that you made so that if you wanted to make the selection down the road, you wouldn't have to go through the whole process again. You could just do it in 2 clicks. So I'm going to Control Z and Control Z again to undo my move and undo my copy and paste. And now I'm back to my selection. And you can do this through your history tab too. So if it was like 6 to 8 Control Z's, but you don't know how many for sure, you could go back to your history tab and it lists every single keystroke or movement. Well, it lists every action that you do anyway, and you could go back as many actions as you want. If you don't have the History tab, go to your Window menu and look down into the list and you'll see History, and you could click on it and it will reveal that Window tab for you, or the History tab for you, excuse me. Okay, so now we're going to go to Select, and we're going to save selection, and we're going to name it. Obviously, we're going to do Octopus or Octo, whatever you want to do. I did Octopus. Okay, click OK. And now if we want to copy and paste, oops, again, the layer is not active. We need to make the background layer active. And we'll do copy and paste, and we get another layer. We're going to redo that. Okay, so now I've got my 2 octopus again, and we're going to move that over just so that it's out of the way. And then we're going to go back to our background copy. We're going to go select to our, we're going to go to our select menu, and in this case, we're going to load selection, and we're going to choose the octopus and click OK. And now you can see the octopus is again selected. And from here, I'm going to change my selection a little bit. I don't want that yellow circle in there or that yellow ring in there. So I'm going to just take my magnetic lasso tool and I'm going to go around the edge. And you don't have to do exact. You can go way out because we just don't want that selection. We don't have to actually go around the edge. I'm going to complete the selection. And there we go. So now the only thing I have is the actual body of the octopus selected. But because I changed the selection, I want to zoom in to make sure that I deselected everything that I didn't want. And as you can see, there's just a little bit there that I don't want. So I'm going to go up to the Polygonal tool and use that instead to undo my selection. Actually, I changed my mind. Maybe the lasso tool will be a little bit better because I don't want a straight line necessarily. And it'll be a little bit easier to draw with the lasso tool versus the polygonal tool. Okay. And we're going to circle around the part that I don't want, and oops, I pressed shift and I wasn't paying attention to that plus tool, so I'm going to do my alt, get my minus tool, and go around what I don't want. And there we go, that's a little bit closer. I don't have the black and white in there. We'll zoom out, and I think I'm pretty happy with this selection. So I'm going to do copy and paste again, and now I have another layer with an octopus on it. And I just grabbed my move tool to move it over to double check, make sure I don't have any of that ring in there. And we're going to move that out of the way or to a more clear spot on the blanket there. And now I'm looking over at my layers and I have a layer 1 and a layer 2 still. And each one of those is for the octopus or octopi, whatever. So we're going to have to fix that. And because right now the only distinguishing feature between the two is one has a loop and one does not, that's how I'm going to go for it. So I'm going to toggle the visibility to make sure that I'm naming the correct octopus with the correct name. And we're going to go octo no loop for one and octo for the other one. Let's go ahead and do octo loop just for kicks. Okay, and that pretty much sums up the lasso selection tools. Next, we're going to work on the monkey and we're going to do our color-based selection tools. So stay tuned for part 3 of this follow along editing series.